that field.
How many people from your community fail to speak English?
How many people?
From the West Indian community don't speak English.
We all speak English, but
Thank
actually
you.
so
Thank
do
you.
most
Thank you.
Indian
Thank
Muslims,
you.
so do
I can
pretty much
take
all
you.
Pakistani Muslims in this
you.
country.
I can take you to streets in Oldham where virtually no one speaks English.
I've been there too.
All right.
But honestly, come on.
The point I'm
You're
making
not
is this.
serious.
I am not here to attack the religion of Islam, but I am here...
Well, you've just been doing it for 3 minutes.
No, I haven't. I'm telling you the alarming figures that have been coming out of these recent polls, particularly in the wake of what has happened on October the 7th and in Gaza, and we have a real problem here. We want...
All right.
I mean, firstly, all right, numbers on immigration need to be sensible, otherwise everyone's quality of life gets diminished.
Nigel Farage is a figure who frequently sparks discussion. Famous for his candid opinions on numerous topics, Farage has also gained attention for his strong stance against radical Islam. This video will delve into his arguments, the evidence he provides, and the wider implications for Europe. Our aim is to offer a comprehensive analysis, presenting facts, viewpoints, and counter-arguments to gain a deeper understanding of this complex issue. Nigel Farage is a well-known British politician. Recognised for his advocacy of Brexit, Farage has also attracted notice for his critical view of radical Islam. His career has been characterised by both notable successes and controversies.
They both want to kill Jews. They both hate homosexuals. They both want to kill homosexuals. Are you Islam Nazis? They are the same thing.
Why has the vetting failed? Let me take you to a candidate called Steve Chilcott.
Never heard of him.
Standing in London.
Never heard of him.
Islam and Nazis are the same thing. Sean Matthews standing in the seat in Lincolnshire, talking about children having their penises chopped off. If we come back to Hitler references, I could go through so many of your candidates.
Well, I'm sorry. Hang on a second. I think
Jake Fraser in Cheshire.
People being alarmed about sex conversion therapy for children. I mean, you think you'll find that's quite a big majority view, actually.
Let's come back
I bet most of your listeners are worried about it. I bet you.
Jake Fraser in Cheshire. The British
Never
public
heard
is
of him.
like... There's a health holocaust, is what COVID was. John Edwards, who's standing in one of the Southampton seats. Vaccine producers are like Nazi armament companies. I could go on and on and on.
Well,
your image is carefully honed.
Do you know what?
Your army behind you.
I've never honed an image in my life. I'm who I am. I've never pretended to be anything different to what I am.
These are
they're ordinary people. That's how people out there speak. That's how they feel.
Ordinary people,
they
Mr.
express
Farage, say
on
Islam
Facebook,
and Nazis are the same thing.
Well, I can tell you something.
Go on. They both want to kill Jews.
No, stop. Do you know why Churchill, in 1933, was almost the only person to see Hitler as a threat? Because he'd seen it with fanatical Islam when he'd fought against it in the 1890s. Now, we've moved on, we're 80 years on, but people are allowed to have opinions. People are allowed to express views.
You're not supporting the idea that Islam and Nazis. Just to clarify there, Mr. Farage.
No, I'm scared of all fanaticisms.
You're equally scared of Islam as you would
No.
be...
You're making a very big mistake
I'm asking
here.
you.
I'm not talking about Islam.
Okay.
At all. In fact...
But your candidate is Islam and Nazis are the same thing.
A very, very prominent...
They both want to kill Jews. They both hate homosexuals.
A very prominent businessman who happens to be a follower of Islam has joined our party this week. I'll be unveiling him next week. The vast majority of moderate Muslims in this country agree with similar principles to you and me. What is worrying is Islamism, extremism. And I tell you what, most Islamic people would agree with that statement.
OK, lastly on this, you have one candidate, Ian Gibbins, who seems to have totally the contrary view as you to concerns Winston Churchill. It would have been far better if Britain had taken Hitler up on his offer of neutrality.
Well, that's what most of the cabinet thought in 1939, 40.
Well, can we talk about 2024?
Well, yeah, I think the Daily Mail thought that quite strongly at the time.
Can we talk
it's
about...
It's a blooming stupid thing to say, and no question.
Is he going to be disciplined?
What can you do? His name's on the ballot. His name's on the ballot paper. I can't remove it.
Have you gone raving mad?
I've got more time to spend than to talk to someone like that.
Farage asserts that radical Islam presents a significant danger to European values and security. He has authored numerous pieces and participated in many interviews to emphasise what he sees as an increasing threat. Admirers see him as a brave advocate revealing uncomfortable truths, while detractors accuse him of creating division and fostering prejudice. Farage's central argument is that radical Islam is encroaching on Europe. He points out several areas of concern. Farage often highlights terrorist attacks committed by Islamist extremists in Europe. He argues that these attacks are not isolated events, but part of a broader trend of radicalization. Farage alleges that Sharia law is being introduced in certain parts of Europe, compromising national legal systems. He provides examples of Sharia courts and cases where Islamic law seems to affect local communities. Farage contends that there is a fundamental conflict between Islamic and Western values. He believes that crucial issues such as women's rights, freedom of speech, and secular governance are at risk.
Now, we debated earlier, the fact that many people, many Jewish people in Britain feel they're being discriminated against. It was rather backed up by the behaviour, I think, of Border Force at Manchester Airport, and British foreign policy has shifted. Have we betrayed Israel? Well, I'm joined by the co-founder of the Muslim Debate Initiative, Abdullah Al-Andalusi, who's back on the programme. Do you understand why Jewish people in this country are beginning to feel threatened and very uncomfortable?
Well, I can't speak to people's internal mental states, but many Jewish people have told me that there's a propaganda that's incited by Israel, that Jews should not feel safe in the presence of people merely calling for the rights of Palestinians, that somehow the rights of Palestinians are inimical to Jewish nationhood, which is not true.
Isn't it?
And this is, no, it's not. Of course, what the rights of Palestinians is inimical to
okay, let's just get to the bottom of this.
Yeah.
So, would you recognise that, and we can argue about the borders, but would you recognise that the state of Israel should exist?
No states have a right to exist. People have a right to exist. States are imagination, are things we imagine in our minds. Are mental constructs. They don't have a physical reality.
Well, normally they do.
Humans have a physical reality.
Mountain ranges. We're an island. So very often geography is a part of this too.
You're talking about the Earth's crust, right? And the Earth's crust exists indeed, and lands exist. But people exist physically, and people have a right to exist, whether they're Jewish, Muslim, Christian, Palestinian, Arab, or whomever. And that is what this is all about. It's about the Palestinians' right to exist.
Israel exists
with dignity and equal rights.
Israel exists as a state. Does it have a right to exist?
As I said before, no state has a right to exist. Right. Only people have a right to exist.
That's not really an answer, is it?
No, it is an answer, because if Israel is a state, it falls within the subset of states. If I'm saying that nation-states don't have a right to exist, people have a right to exist.
I don't agree with that at all. People form together in nation-states. The Jewish people have formed together and I understand, complex history over 2,000 years and all the rest. I mean, the point is this, Abdullah, that, from the river to the sea, that was put up on the Elizabeth Tower, that's been chanted on marches weekend after weekend, even the kindest interpretation of that is that it is about the abolition of the current state of Israel.
Well, look, we were all about the abolition of the state of South Africa as an apartheid state, changing it into an inclusive state.
Which it is. So
now it is, yeah. But before, Margaret Thatcher and the Tories were all against that. So if you're saying to me that should we be against Israel is currently formed as an ethno-nationalist state, privileging one ethnic group, one group of Semites over other Semites, then I think this should change. All Semites in the land of Palestine, be they Palestinian Arabs or Jews, should at the very minimum have an equal dignity, equal tolerance, equal rights, and equal freedom to go about. The Likud party, why don't you condemn the Likud party, who's one of their formal statements and on their manifesto is from the Jordan River to the sea, it will only be Israeli sovereignty, right? So is that genocidal then? Oh, no one talks about that.
No. Look, I would love to see a two-state solution and a compromise, but my problem with this is, and we had, Ralphie Bloom on from Manchester, and I know you were delayed getting here a bit earlier, saying that many of the other things that are being chanted in the streets, are basically death to the Jews. Do you understand why the Jewish community are concerned?
Well, if you'd like to show me video footage of anyone chanting anything that is a racist, or genocidal, and so on, if it exists, but guess what? I have not seen it. I've looked at all the footages, I've even looked at GB News' footage and so on, and you never see anyone, even you guys don't show anyone, citing racist or genocidal statements.
I think the
Are you saying that Free Palestine is a genocidal statement?
I think that the glider images on the back of the anoraks were pretty unpleasant, don't you?
Well, for one individual, the glider image, yeah. And the police dealt with those two individuals out of hundreds of thousands of individuals, right? Are you really going to judge the whole march of hundreds of thousands of people by one or two individuals, which the police dealt with?
We have showed a lot of footage over time of chanting in the streets, of many other things that normally would not be deemed to be acceptable. Where does all this end, in your opinion?
But first, I'm just saying, is Free Palestine, saying Free Palestine, a statement that you'd condemn?
Not just Free Palestine on its own. No, it's everything. It's things that go around that.
Like what? The abolition of apartheid, of treating Palestinians as second-class citizens, of no-class citizens, administrative detentions, denying their rights.
The fact that from the river to the sea has some quite deep connotations when it's put in a pro-Palestinian context.
Yeah, freedom for everybody. But what's wrong with that?
The United Nations last night passed a resolution calling on a ceasefire. And I'm not condemning it because it did very explicitly say in the resolution that the hostages should be released. Do you think there's any possibility of negotiations with Netanyahu?
Well, that remains to be seen because his rather hard right stance of denying the Palestinians any state for themselves, denying them even a one-state solution or just giving them equal rights in the first place, because they say that would make a 51% Palestinian majority state, and they don't want that because of their ethno-nationalist, racist policies. This means that it's very difficult to have any hope with Netanyahu. All we can hope for is that the international community and many in the Israeli public themselves pressure the government to bring to the negotiations to free the Jewish hostages that are held by Hamas and to free the 3,558 Palestinian hostages held by the Israeli government under administrative detention.
Whether the Israelis are racist or whether they're just battling for self-survival, surrounded by people and not too far away, Iran and others that want to destroy them, remains to be seen.
I'm not saying Israelis in general are racist. I'm saying that the Israeli government has very publicly avowed racist policies about wanting to maintain a Jewish majority. If that entails denying Palestinians equal citizenship in the territories that Israel claims are theirs. If you have people living in your territory and you say it's theirs, it belongs to you yourself, give them equal citizenship then. And they don't.
I understand the boundary issue. I get that. Abdullah, the only thing that your conversation with me proves, and equally the conversation we had earlier, is that there's no end to this coming any.
Farage has emphasised the issue of grooming gangs in the UK, claiming they are mainly made up of Muslim men. He argues that political correctness and the fear of being labelled racist have allowed these crimes to continue. Farage uses statistics on the frequency of terrorist attacks in Europe, detailing the perpetrators' identities and backgrounds. He cites significant incidents such as the Paris attacks and the Manchester bombing. Farage references news articles and investigative reports to support his assertions about Sharia law and grooming gangs. He points to media coverage of these topics, suggesting it supports his viewpoint. Farage includes interviews with people who have experienced or witnessed the impact of radical Islam. These accounts aim to add a personal aspect to his arguments. Although Farage's followers believe he is tackling important issues, he faces significant criticism.
The faith of Islam, peacefully practiced by millions of our fellow citizens, is emphatically not the same thing as the extremist political ideology of Islamism, which aims to separate Muslims from the rest of society. Islamist extremists and far-right groups are spreading a poison. That poison is extremism. In recent weeks and months, we have seen a shocking increase in extremist disruption and criminality. What started as protests on our streets has descended into intimidation, threats, and planned acts of violence. Jewish children fearful to wear their school uniform lest it reveal their identity. Muslim women abused in the street for the actions of a terrorist group they have no connection with. Now our democracy itself is a target. Council meetings and local events have been stormed. MPs do not feel safe in their homes. Long-standing parliamentary conventions have been upended because of safety concerns. And it is beyond alarming that last night the Rochdale by-election returned a candidate who dismisses the horror of what happened on October the 7th, who glorifies Hezbollah and is endorsed by Nick Griffin, the racist former leader of the BNP. I need to speak to you all this evening because this situation has gone on long enough and demands a response not just from government, but from all of us. There are forces here at home trying to tear us apart. Since October the 7th, there have been those trying to take advantage of the very human angst that we all feel about the terrible suffering that war brings to the innocent, to women and children, to advance a divisive, hateful ideological agenda. On too many occasions recently, our streets have been hijacked by small groups who are hostile to our values and have no respect for our democratic traditions. Membership of our society is contingent on some simple things: that you abide by the rule of law, and that change can only come through the peaceful democratic process. Threats of violence and intimidation are alien to our way of doing things. They must be resisted at all times. Islamist extremists and the far right feed off and embolden each other. They are equally desperate to pretend that their violence is somehow justified.
Critics assert that Farage incites hatred and fear against Muslims. They argue that he generalizes the behavior of a minority to the entire religion, fostering division and prejudice. Farage's methods, including his confrontational style and selective use of evidence, are often criticized. Some contend that he cherry-picks data and exaggerates incidents to support his narrative. Farage's controversial tactics and his role in promoting divisive rhetoric have also been condemned. Some believe these actions undermine his credibility and overshadow any legitimate issues he raises. The debate around radical Islam and figures like Nigel Farage carries broader implications for Europe. Farage's concerns have impacted discussions on immigration. Some advocate for stricter controls to prevent radical elements from entering Europe. The integration of Muslim communities into European societies remains a contentious topic. Farage's arguments underscore the challenges and tensions that can arise in multicultural environments.
Now to the man who could be more responsible than any other individual for putting Sir Keir Starmer into Downing Street. Good morning,
You've got
Mr.
to
Farage.
laugh, haven't you? You've got to laugh, Trevor. You follow this narrative that all the media follow. Let's get it straight. We've had 14 years of Conservative government, a mega majority in 2019, which I significantly helped them to obtain. Millions of those voters...
I've made that point this morning, by the way.
...utterly betrayed. If I'd stayed at home, if I'd gone to the Bahamas fishing for the month, Keir Starmer would have won a big majority anyway. And many of our voters, if they're polled and spoken to, if we weren't here, wouldn't vote for anybody.
Is there any chance I could ask you a question?
Go on then.
Right. Let's start with the unambiguously racist remarks made by one of your own volunteers, Andrew Parker. Now, you said this is a setup.
I know it is.
Do you have a single shred of proof?
Well, I'll tell you who he is. He's an actor, okay, number one.
All sorts of people are actors. That's not proof that this was a setup. Have you got any proof?
He's an actor with a rather well-spoken actor, but he has an alter ego. He does what he calls rough speaking, all right? I was there working in the office in Essex when he turned up, and he was, from the moment he walked through the room, like a version of Alf Garnett. Now, I didn't know this was an act. It was an act from the start to the end. He spent time with the two Channel 4 undercover reporters in the office. In fact, he spent most of the morning with them. He then said, I've got a big car. He took canvassers out with Channel 4 in the car with him. He tried to get our canvassers to say nasty racist things, which of course they did not. And then he comes out with this, and literally Alf Garnett stream, including all mosques should be turned into Weatherspoons. This was an act from start to finish. It was a deliberate attempt to derail our campaign.
I've let you explain yourself. There's a number of things in that. There's not actually anything in that says that you know that this was a setup. But what I think is even more interesting is...
Well, hang on.
Let me finish my question. You just said the guy came in and he was a walking Alf Garnett.
In accent terms.
Yeah.
In accent term. He didn't say anything offensive to me at all. It was only when he got a couple of our canvassers in the car with Channel 4 filming that he tried to provoke them. He also, by the way, specialises, his services online include undercover filming.
But you still don't have any proof that actually he wasn't genuinely a guy who decided he wanted to support you.
Well, if you wanted to support us, why not come as the person you really are? Why come using your false acting voice?
Quite a lot of the people who support you come as they really are. There's the guy who described gay people as degenerates. The one who talked about using migrants in small boats as target practice.
Well, that's the same guy.
People who reposted anti-Semitic comments.
That's the same guy. Well, hang on.
How many of you had to disown so far?
A few. I inherited...
What's a few? 2, 6,
no,
100?
Perhaps a dozen, something like that. Look, Trevor, you know me well enough. We've known each other 20 years. You know that I fought harder than anyone to drive the BNP out as an electoral force, and I did so with...
I've got a bone to pick with you about that, but we'll come back to that later.
Success. When I ran UKIP for all those years, and when I set the Brexit Party up, didn't allow anybody to even be a member who'd been part of one of those groups. Now, I have inherited...
Farage's case raises important questions about the balance between free speech and hate speech. It's vital to determine where legitimate criticism of a religion ends and the incitement of hatred begins. Nigel Farage's views on radical Islam are undeniably polarising. Whether regarded as a champion of truth or a promoter of divisiveness, his influence on the debate about Islam in Europe is significant. This video has aimed to present his perspectives, the evidence he provides, and the criticisms he faces, offering a thorough look at a complex and contentious issue. The threat of radical Islam, as highlighted by Farage, remains a crucial topic for Europe, requiring careful examination and informed discussion. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and for more content like this, be sure to subscribe to the channel.